He's a very special Jew. So he was in Thailand. He raises money for Breslov institutions here in Israel. So he was in Thailand, and so I got off the mikveh. I should tell you about Chabad in Thailand. I said, what? So 2 Shabbosim ago, they had a major Shabbos in Thailand. They had the 5 Chabad houses in Thailand had 7,000 people Friday night.
Wow.
It's just beyond belief. 7,000 people Friday night. That's what he said. I mean, I don't know. You know, he's a Breslover, so you can believe him, right? He's not making it up about Lubavitch. What?
Why not 10?
Why not 10? Go to Thailand, open up a Chabad house, and find the other 3.
Yeah.
Right. So, and he was just spoiled. Of course, you're saying these people say these things against Lubavitch, and they don't know what they're talking about. They have to go out and see what I see wherever I go. Baruch Hashem. 7,000 is like. But he also chapped, which is really very special. He said 7,000 people saying Kriya Shema, hearing Kiddush. That's what he said, which is the right approach, right? That they're doing mitzvahs. 7,000 people. That's some sitting and eating. And it costs 15 shekels for a meal. So I think it's heavily subsidized. Okay. We got, as far as I know, we got to the end of Gimel yesterday. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm numb.
This is Amnon. He's Amnon with a nun. Okay, Amnon. However, so we have compared sleep and golus at great length, explaining both the advantages of each and the disadvantages of each. We have to get rid of one more before Yosef shows up. Like in a person down below. Inyan his almus. This notion of concealment beis sheina, is that the powers of the soul go up to their source in the nefesh above. V'chisaron v'giroin, and the lacking, 2 words of lacking. Shebesheina, that it exists at the time of sleep, who rak b'keiches agiluyim, is only in the revealed powers as they are below. Revealed powers are the revealed powers of the soul as they reveal themselves in your life in physical reality down here in Eilam Hazeh. And those keiches are down here, those keiches are keiches heim ba'ifin bilti masudar. They're in a disorderly fashion down here. Masha'ein came, that's not the case. Keiches aklim b'nefesh. The powers of the soul that are elevated in order to receive the energy that they receive while we sleep down here. And so they're incorporated in the soul, in the source of the soul. Im yesem sham bashva. Right? Even though they're in a state of equality, which we said would therefore produce disorder. That's the source of the disorder down here, is that the true reality of the neshama is now that it's in a state of absolute equality and unity. Right? Up there, ein zachisara. That's not a lacking. The opposite is true. B'yesem klulim b'nefesh, when they are incorporated in the soul above, heim b'shleimus, they're in a much more whole state and complete state. Yesem mikvishem kishanim shachim megilu, even more than they are when they're drawn down into a revealed state in the body. Right? So that's the dichotomy of the neshama in a state of sleep. Down below, there's a lack of order. Why? Well, after the source of the lack of order, the Rebbe says, is the fact that the neshama is really now in a state where there is no order, where everything's one. Right? So there's no higher level, lower level. Right? Higher levels and lower levels are a function of Seder Yishtalshelus, function of creation down here. Right? Up there in the Eibush, there's no higher level, there's just being, just essential being. So the neshama experiences that state of essential being when we sleep. That expresses itself down here in a lack of order. Down here, there is no hierarchy. Well, there is a hierarchy down here, but we don't experience it when we sleep because our neshama be'etzem is in a place beyond hierarchy, up there. Right? Okay, the residue of that down here is the strange experiences we have in dreams. Al derech zeu gam banimshal, so too in the analog. The inyan is almost bezman golus, the time of concealment and the time of golus, shena, and golus is compared to sleep, who shagiluyim misailim lemakarim, that the revealed states of godly light that should be powering and giving energy, energizing this world. Where are they? They've elevated to their source. Visham, right there, makar right? Huba shagilim misailim lemakarim. Visham, makar di Israel, right? Im hamayla di Israel. Mitten ganzen Sturm, the greatness of the Jewish people up there, the greatness of the reality of Israel, which is the neshama, which is up there now with these levels of godly light that are destined to ultimately be revealed here and power the world. Right, is with ganzen Sturm is great energy, a great storm, literally. But dugmas keches hakaliyim benefesh sheim b'shleim is just like the powers of the soul that are up there and they're in a state of wholeness. So too those levels of godly reality that are in terms of what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to be down here and energizing the world in a revealed way. Either not because of gullus, so they elevate back up to their source in godliness, just like you and I when we sleep. Where is this great shturim revealed? Up above. But down here in Seder Ishtalshalos, down in the world, it's not revealed. It's not recognized. As a matter of fact, it's a place of darkness temporarily. It's been a long temporary, but it's still temporary. So what comes as a result of that is golus. So it's a chicken egg to the extent that golus is that reality, and what's causing it is golus. Okay, say that. They work together. So when the king's sleep moved, again, it does not say the king woke up. Literally, it says his sleep moved. V'nimshach mi'makar b'pnimius, and is drawn down from its source in inner reality, b'seder ishtalshalos, in the orderly downward emanation of godliness. Right. So when the sleep moved, where did the sleep move to? Right. Well, let's see. First, the Rebbe is going to talk about the Ma'ila of Yisrael. Az misgala Ma'ilis Yisrael mitashturim. What was revealed down here in Seder Ishtalshalos, the greatness of the Jewish people was revealed. The true reality of the Jewish people. Are the Jewish people a special people? Yes, absolutely. Is that recognized down here in Golus? No. At the time of Purim, was it recognized? Absolutely. There's no question. As a matter of fact, it says in the Haggadah that a lot of people came and wanted to become Jews. How many of them we said yes to, I have no idea, but it says beferish in Megillas Esther. I say the Haggadah, Megillas Esther. It says beferish that they wanted to misya hadim. They did. They wanted to become Jews, right? So the true reality was revealed at the time of Purim. Oh, so let's see what that means relative to the king's sleep moving. Based on this, it's emphasized even greater. In an even greater way, the connection of opposite states of reality and Golus. Dagam, that even though Shabazmana Golus, that in the time of Golus, Eilui Israel, the loftiness, special character of the Jewish people, who Oidieser Mibazmana Bias, is even greater than the time of Bias. Why? Well, because we're sourced above time of Golus, on a certain level, there's an elevation of the Jewish people, right? Again, because we're connected to that light above. Up there in Etzim, he's the most powerful expression of the Jewish people. We talked about it yesterday in terms of relating to the very existence of Golus. The fact that there's something called Golus means there's an incredibly powerful connection between the Jewish people and the Eibusher that's immutable. Because other peoples aren't in Golus. So Golus mitzad echad is an incredibly powerful expression of the loftiness of the Jewish people. On the other hand, generally we're rather downtrodden in the time of Golus. So it's this dream state of on two different states of reality existing simultaneously. Well, why is it that the Yidden are on such a high level at the time of Golus? Mikevin shebizmana Golus agiluim misailim lemakaram. So because the revealed states of reality are elevated above to their source. Shesham hu makar Yisrael. That's also the source of Yisrael. Afal PK, nevertheless, hini loizu bilvad shalamata ein nikeres hamayla Yisrael, but not only below is it not recognized the greatness of the Jewish people. Ela adarabba, we're in a state where we're subservient to others. And so in Gashmias, but that means also on a certain level in Ruchnias, Ela shehim mekablim hashpasam, they're getting their influence, their benefits, al yedei sarei umais, by virtue of the ministers of the nations of the world, shehem b'golus etzlam, that they're in golus by them. Which is really quite fascinating also. Meaning even if the Jews aren't downtrodden, they're still beholden to non-Jewish energy for much of what they receive. And they're part of a non-Jewish culture, etc., etc. So they were talking about the state of the union, right? So Jews in America, which is a place of golus, it's not a terrible place. The Rebbe refers to America as Medina Shel Chesed all the time, right? A place of great loving kindness. Okay, does that mean that that's nirvana? It's not nirvana either. It's not where we want to end up. Okay, but in America, what are the Jews beholden to? They get a lot of hashpah, positive, also negative, obviously, but positive hashpah from America or France or wherever they happen to be. Right? So that's showing a certain subservience to that state of reality, which is not natural. It's unnatural. The negative side of golus. Mm-hmm. The positive side of golus is that there's a state of us that's connected to the Eibishter in a more powerful state than at any other time. This strange dichotomy of golus. Okay, let's keep going. V'yesh leimar. Shezeu, now the Rebbe's going to start explaining other ideas relative to this idea and then explain what Nadadosh Nasa Melech really means. This is one of the reasons. Golus is also compared to pregnancy, right? Meaning when something's in a hidden state, right? Ibur also is a very interesting state when a child is in the womb of its mother. So then what? It's also in this dichotomous state. What's that? There's two things. One and its opposite. That even though shener daluk al reishay, while the child is in the womb, so there's a candle burning above his head, umalamdi meisei kalatarakulo, and they're learning all of the Torah with the malach in the womb. So on one hand, the womb is an incredibly lofty state, but on the other hand, what? Shezeo dafka b'yesib betanime. This is specifically in the stomach of his mother. Masheinkin kishnela, that stops when he's born. Okay, so that's a very lofty state. Nevertheless, there's another state that the child's in, which is the opposite of that, a very low state. And what's that? When he's in his mother's stomach, Reisha Bein Birkav, his head is between his feet. In other words, what? What does that seem to represent, based on everything we learned in the Mimer so far? So his head is between his feet, who cares? Okay, in other words, what?
Dreaming in Golus.
Okay, but when he's not in Golus, I'm a kid in a womb. Which is loftier, the head or the feet? Head. Is it recognized in the womb? No. Right? So in other words, that's a very low level. It's a level where all of the hierarchy that exists once the child is born is not revealed yet. Right? So that child's head is between its feet. Right? In other words, it's also not even, its head is not even the source of its vitality. Down here, right? You breathe through your head, you eat through your head, right? Your head is rather important, right? Without it, it's hard to make it. It's hard to make it down here without a head. I don't mean without any intelligence, I mean without a physical head, right? If someone says to you, I'll let you keep Torah and mitzvahs if you let me cut off your head, so I don't think that's a very good deal, right? Okay. The person said that about your arm, so it's possible to live without an arm, right? Okay, I'm not saying what you should do in that situation. We're saying it's possible to live without it. It's impossible to live without a head. The head is the source of it all, not in the womb. That doesn't mean a kid can live without a head in the womb, but in the womb, that's not how it works. Where does the kid's sustenance come from? Where's all of the sustenance that child requires while he's in the womb? Where's it coming from?
The mother?
The mother. Well, how?
The umbilical cord?
Belly button, right? The umbilical cord, right? It's all coming through the belly, right? Which is, okay, it's really quite astounding that immediately we transform into someone else when we're born, right? They cut that, they tie it up, an innie or an outie, it depends on who you are. And you end up breathing and doing everything through this thing that's stuck on top of your shoulders. Okay. But when you're in there, that's not how it works. Right, which is really quite, the way I was going to mention it, it's quite astounding. So on one hand, this kid's on a very, very high level. He's sitting learning Torah with a malach. On the other hand, he's on a very low level. It's not recognized the advantage of the head on the feet. Right? We say to Mizu, the head is between the feet. In other words, the feet seem to be more powerful than the head. Even his food, his sustenance, he's eating what his mother eats, right? Meaning he's getting from his mother those nutrients that he requires. It's not through the mouth, head, right? Through the belly button, stomach. As is explained at great length in Torah Or by the Alter Rebbe, and the drushim of the Rebbeim afterwards. In other words, the child in utero is Golus is compared to Ibur, meaning it's something that ultimately is going to result in birth, right? Birth of Geula, okay, but there's a temporary state of concealment of everything, and that state of Golus is very similar to Ibur. Ibur is similar to Golus, and that Ibur also has this davar v'hipucha. On one hand, the kid is on a very, very high level and connected to something extremely lofty. On the other hand, he's on a very, very low level. His head and his feet are the same. He's getting food through his belly, right? He's not as sophisticated as he's going to be when he comes out. Okay, the Rebbe continues in that vein and explains something quite astounding, which is also in line with what we're saying about Golus, negative and positive simultaneously. We don't want to be in Golus. We want to be awake. But there's an advantage to Golus, just not down here. Based on this, we can explain something Chazal say that's really quite wild. We're talking about the destruction of the first temple. The second temple, there weren't kruvim in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kodesh HaKadoshim was an empty room. It wasn't an aron. Okay, but we've all learned about this the last 2 weeks, so we know what we're talking about, right? There were kruvim in the beis Hamikdash, in the temple, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The kruvim were on the kaparas, and there's a machlek is exactly what they looked like, right? But the Rashi says they were childlike, they had childlike face, and they had wings, and they were on the kaparas. The kaparas is the lid of the aron. Machlekes Rashi and Ramban, whether it's a separate kli, it's not part of the aron, or it's part of the aron, right? It's one kli, and the aron has the box and the top. Or no, the comparison is a separate kli. Right? Very famous Sikh of the Rebbe on that. You can look it up. When the heathens came into the Heichel, what did they see? Now, what used to happen with the kruvim? The kruvim would move. When Am Yisrael was finding favor in the eyes of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, they would embrace. And when Am Yisrael was not finding favor in the eyes of the Eibishter, so they would look away from each other. Right? That's what used to happen to the kruvim. Okay. So then, of course, when the heathens are entering into the beis Hamikdash to destroy it, because Am Yisrael is certainly at this moment not finding tremendous favor in the eyes of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, you would certainly expect the kruvim to be looking away from each other. But of course, they weren't, right? They were embracing. Right? When the Nachrim went into the Heichel, Ra'u kruvim ha'me'urim zeh b'zeh. They saw them embracing. So Rabbi says, now obviously this is rather wondrous. This is hard to understand. Hare kruvim me'urim. Oh, but you have one. Okay, Baruch Hashem. We had one left, and we were thinking someone's going to come take it before you walk in, so they won't have any left. But you have one. Right? Hare kruvim me'urim zeh b'zeh. Murder, that instructs al goydel achiba de Kadosh Baruch Hu v'Yisrael kechibas ish v'isha. That represents the great love and dearness of a Kadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people, like the love of a husband and a wife. Ubashah shenichnasu nochim lahechel, when the nochim entered into the hechel, that you would think is the opposite of the endearment of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Jewish people. He's allowing these heathens to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. Right? So this is as low a moment as we've ever had. So why are they embracing? Hu says an amazing thing. It's absolutely astounding. Shadafka az hayaor naila b'yeser. That time there was a tremendously powerful light. Or a light beyond the natural order. This light, unfortunately, was in its source, in its place, beyond the natural order, and therefore, but it didn't illuminate below. So down below, there was a state of tremendous darkness, but existential reality was a time of tremendous loftiness. How can that be? Because that's the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash is one of the most powerful expressions of the Eibishter's unending love for the Jewish people. Because what should he have done? Destroy the Jewish people. Right? That's what he should have done. Right? Why didn't he do that? Because that's an immutable connection. So he destroyed some rocks. Holy rocks, but rocks instead. And that's what he says. Right? That the Mishkan is Biloshin Mashkain, like a collateral. He takes it as collateral till we start to behave. Then he'll give it back. But he doesn't take us. He doesn't do away with us. He'll never do away with us because we have an immutable connection. When is that expressed most powerfully? Dafkin Golus. Al pi Maimer Chazal, we can add based on another Maimer Chazal. Right? What's that Maimer Chazal? So this is a din in marriage. It's a Gemara in Yevomis. Chayav Adam lifked es ishtei b'shah shu yetzel l'derech. Before a man goes away, he's supposed to have relations with his wife because he's about to leave and he has an obligation to. One of his obligations is that she should be physically satisfied, in also in addition to emotionally and financially, etc. Since at the time of Golus, the Jewish people are like a woman whose husband has gone overseas, we're left alone. Before the Baal goes away, HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'derech, Haisa Pekida, he visited his wife, the Jewish people. Therefore, the Kruvim were embracing like a man and his wife. Wow. So what did the Rebbe just say? What happened right before we went into Golus? The Eibishter impregnated the world with Geula. That's what he just said. Wow. That's what Golus is. Right? Golus is Ibur. Right? So the Eibishter united with the Jewish people before he left, so to speak. Wow. Al pizeh yuvan ba'emek yeseh. Therefore, we understand on a deeper level, Masha Golus nimshal le'ibur. Now we understand why it's compared to Ibur, pregnancy. Vagula le'leido, to birth. The kamesha lamata, that just like below, kishadam pekedis ishtei, when a man has relations with his wife, nasa yitziras avlad. So that's how children are created. And I know you don't know anything about that yet, but that's okay. You'll learn about it. But when you get engaged, you're going to then sit and have some classes with someone who will teach you all about these things that you know nothing about. I understand, right? Okay. But actually, I'm on a thing here, so I have to be careful what I say. But you probably, I can't pause this, but anyway. You probably, and I'm not picking on you. I'm just telling you a reality. Coming from where people tend to come from, Taka, They know nothing about all that. And what do people have to learn before they get married? What Jewish intimacy is all about, right? And it has nothing to do with what they say. Exactly the opposite, right? And it's extremely important to learn all that, and you do before you get married, right? You don't learn about it as a bacher. There's no reason for a bacher to know about it. Once a bacher decides that he's found some lady that he wants to spend the rest of his life with, so he has to learn about these things, and that's part of what he learns about. He learns about all the halachas that are relevant to these things, but he also learns about the panemius of it all, and it's very important to do. You have to find a good person to learn it with, and there are good people to learn it with. Right? So what happens in pregnancy? At the beginning, the child is concealed inside his mother's stomach. He's completely concealed. What happens? Once he grows a little in there, and there is a rosh, and there are feet, so he's in that state that we described at the end of his dalit, right? Which is this dichotomous state. And throughout all the time of Ibur, he grows in a, again, it's natural, but it's rather miraculous how the whole thing works, right? And you should say a lot of Tehillim when your wife is pregnant, so that God makes it work the way it's supposed to work. And the fact that it works the way it's supposed to work as often as it does is really quite astounding, because what has to happen in there is just beyond belief, right? One little example. This happens over the whole body, but one little example. The optical nerves. There's an eye growing over here. There's a brain over there. And there's an optical center of the brain that has to connect to the eyes. So what do the eyes do at a certain point in the development of a child in utero? The eyes send out these little alfalfa sprouts. These little alfalfa sprouts are the nerves that connect the eye to this optical center of the brain. These little alfalfa sprouts start growing out of the eye, and they wiggle around up there, and then they find the place in the brain where they're supposed to attach, and they go. This is happening hundreds of millions of times. Right? And if it misses, nothing works. I mean, that part of whatever, it doesn't work. But you know what? We're working, right? Look at us. It's all working. It's really just push it beyond belief, the whole thing. God is so cool. How he dreamed this up is really just beyond belief. But okay, people complain about him. Okay, so first, where do we start? We start in there, and then we go through this whole process, gestation, it's called, which sounds like you have indigestion or something, but it's really the growth of a child in utero. How long are elephants? Like, it's a couple of years, right? Elephants' gestation period, anybody know? I think it's a couple of years. I mean, they're pretty big when they come out, right? It takes a while to grow that big. Right? I think it's a couple of years. So we're 9 months, right? If you didn't know that. Right? Then he comes out into the world in a revealed state. So to above, shapakido, the visitation, shahaisa, beregesh, lifnei agolus, the Eibishter embracing Am Yisrael, that moment before Golus, the Kruvim embracing as the heathens walk into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Nase miyad hamshochas ha'or, that brought about immediately the drawing down of light, Yitziras of Vlad, gam lamata, also below. Elo, sham shachosu behelim. What happened at the moment of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash? Geula. It just took time, right? Famous, the Rebbe doesn't bring it here, famous medrash. It's talked about a lot during the 3 weeks, etc. The Rebbe mentions it a lot of sichos, maimarim, people talk about it, people bring about it, right? The Gemara, I don't remember the exact words of the Gemara, but I think it's a cow. It might have been a donkey, but it was a cow. I think a cow made a noise. And an RV says, your temple has been destroyed. And the cow or the donkey makes the noise again. Your Mashiach is born. Right? What's the birthday of Mashiach? Tisha B'Av. Right? On some level. So say Chazal. Right? But it's all hidden at first. Ibur. Uba'ofen the Gullus, Ibur. Right? Like Gullus is an Ibur. Uba'meshach Zman of Gullus, and 3 times of Gullus, what happens? U'heilich v'gadol. What's growing? Geula is growing. It's getting to a state where it's ready to be born. Right? Miyom liyom. Ad shebakarav mamish, until very, very soon, tia later, there'll be the birth. Vagilui bagula sida, and the revelation in the future redemption. Wow. Pashut unbelievable. Right? How tzaddikim look at reality. They understand reality, but therefore they see reality in a different way than we do. Right? Story of the Tzemach Tzedek. Who was the Tzemach Tzedek? It might have been the Rebbe Marash. I heard it, I think, in the name of the Tzemach Tzedek. Right? That a chassid came in and was complaining about all sorts of things. How terrible this is, and how terrible that is, and he needed a bracha for this, he needed a bracha for this, and this is terrible, and this is terrible. So the Tzemach Tzedek asked him to look on the wall, and it was a wall. There were 3 dots on the wall, right? Black dots. So the Tzemach Tzedek asked him to look on the wall. So he said, "What's on the wall?" So he said, 3 black dots. The Tzemach Tzedek, as I recall the story, he actually called him a name, like, Bulach, which we saw yesterday in Hayem Yem, right? Bulach is the guy who's walking on the street. What does the stone in the street say to you if you're not thinking about the Eibishter as you're walking along? Bulach, why are you any better than me? Why are you walking on me? I should be walking on you. I'm not thinking about God and you're not thinking about God. So why do you get to walk on me? Yesterday's a Yom Yom. Right, so I think the Tzemach Tzedek called him a name.
What does Bulach mean?
Blockhead. So, I mean, that's how it's usually translated. It's the closest, right? Bulach sort of sounds like blockhead, right? You blockhead. I mean, it's Charlie Brown, but I mean, whatever. So the Tzemach Tzedek called him something like, whatever, and said the whole wall is white, and all you see are 3 black dots. The whole wall is white. Why don't you see the white? No, you see 3 black dots. Woe is me. Right? It's a pretty powerful lesson. Right? Now, the Rebbe feels the pain of Gullus more than anybody imaginable, and yet can also talk about it in this way, understanding what it truly is. But all of the pain of Gullus is embodied in the Rebbe, because the Rebbe is the Rosh B'nai Yisrael. Just saw it last night with this thing that we're doing with short 7-minute, 8-minute video clips to teach. I mean, that's not going to teach them any English, but it doesn't matter. Baruch Hashem, we're getting away with it. The Israeli government wants the yeshiva students to learn English. So the way that Lubavitch worked out with the government, which is really quite astounding that they went along with this, is that they would watch 7-minute videos of either English letters of the Rebbe or gem videos where people are speaking in English and someone would translate them and explain them. This is how they're going to learn English. So just saw a video that's going to be, we're going to film it tonight, but Eli Wiesel is talking about the first time he met the Rebbe. Eli Wiesel was a very special person. Vishnitzer Chassid, right? He told the Rebbe's my Rebbe, but I'm a Vishnitzer Chassid. So the Rebbe convinced him to get married. After the war, he wouldn't get married. He was older, he got married. Baruch Hashem, had a kid. So Eli Wiesel, the first time he met a Lubavitcher somewhere. I don't remember exactly where. Probably he was giving a lecture somewhere, and he met a Lubavitcher. I don't know. It was right. Eli Wiesel was writing for the Forward, Yiddish newspaper in New York, and he met Gershon Jacobson, the Jacobson brothers, Yossi and Simon. He met their father, who was the editor of the Algemeiner Journal, another Yiddish paper in New York. So they would meet. So Gershon Jacobson convinced Eli Wiesel to come to a Farbrengen with him. And he's a very, very, very special person. And what did he see? He said he went to now this is someone who went through the camps. And he said, I went to the Rebbe and I saw the most real person. And he said, what did I see on the Rebbe's face? He said, I saw the pain of Gullus on the Rebbe's face. The pain of all of the Gullus of the Jewish people on the Rebbe's face, how he's carrying it all himself. Wow. That's what he saw. Not that he saw depression. He didn't say he saw anything depressed. He saw responsibility. Right? I just saw that video last night. I have to talk about it today. Right? Don't really have to talk very much about it because Baruch Hashem, the ones we're doing now have Hebrew subtitles, so I don't have to do anything. They're going to watch it and I'll say 5 words and that'll be that. But it's a fascinating project. Get to see all sorts of interesting things. Right? A Yeshiva Bacher who was having Sveikus and Amunah, and he went to his Yeshiva and he went to his teachers, he went to everybody and no one can answer him. So he wrote a 7-page letter to the Rebbe and he didn't get an answer. Then he wrote a 3-page letter to the Rebbe, he didn't get an answer. Then about a month later, all of a sudden, he felt like all the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders, and he was just completely connected and davening with energy and learning with energy, and he was besimcha, and he was just unbelievable. So the Rosh Yeshiva of Shlomo Chaim Kesselman, he was in Chabad, Shlomo Chaim called him in. Shmuel Ruddle from Milan, Italy, special Jew. So Shmuel, what's going on? He said, I don't know. All of a sudden, I feel that every weight has been lifted from my shoulder and that the problems I was talking to you about have disappeared and I'm just feeling so connected. I don't know what happened. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. Right? He didn't get any answers from the Rebbe for his 2 letters, nothing. So then Rav Shlomo Chaim took some letters out of his drawer. He used to write the Rebbe regularly and get long answers back regularly because he was a Rosh Yeshiva in Chabad and he was in contact with the Rebbe all the time and the Rebbe was telling him, every single letter, since the first letter that Rodel wrote, every single letter the Rebbe asked the Rosh Yeshiva, and how's Shmuel ben Fega HaKoyen doing? What's happening with Shmuel ben Fega HaKoyen? He said, I thought the Rebbe wasn't taking care of me. Right? Every single letter the Rebbe asked about this Bach. Right? At a certain point, it all lifted. I thought the Rebbe wasn't taking care of me. But he was. He just didn't have to write it to me in a letter to tell me. What really always astounded, I don't know whether we appreciated it as much at the time, but over time, these things sink in. The Rebbe would come back from the oil. The Rebbe would be at the oil for 4 or 5 hours. What was going on at the oil? The Rebbe was reading letters. What was in those letters? All sorts of good news, right? Everybody was writing the Rebbe all the good news in their life, right? That's what they were writing the Rebbe. Oh, I just married off a son, and our daughter had a baby, and my business just tripled in size. That's all the letters to the Rebbe. That's what's in those letters, right? Yeah? Hello? Earth to class? Right? Yeah? No. What do people write? Pain. Right? Sickness. And everybody wrote. Everybody. Right? I remember once sitting in Rabbi Groner's office, and he had I've told you this story many times. There was a door, and out there was the sukkah was out there, but that was he had his fax machine there in those days, and it wasn't a plain paper fax in those days. It was those rolls, and we were talking, and every 10 seconds, literally, or 15 seconds, you'd hear and a fax and then it would stop, and then you'd hear half a ring and the fax, right? So, but we were busy talking. All of a sudden, he got up and said, "What are you going to say?" Well, I'm changing the rule. So he had like a 6th sense, when it was time to change the rule, nonstop. So I said, "This nonstop all the time?" He said, "Yeah, 24/6, nonstop, fax." There's all letters to the Rebbe, right? So then he said, with a smile, he said, everybody writes. Everybody. He said, the guy who's on the front page of the religious newspaper making a speech against Lubavitch, on the front page of some religious newspaper, when his mother needs a bracha, he writes here. Right. He said, everybody. And he smiled. No names. He just said, everybody writes. The biggest misnagdim in the world in terms of the public persona and the politics of it all. When his daughter needs a shidduch, who did he write? Everybody. Okay. So the Rebbe takes those things to the oil and he reads them. And most of them are not good news. And no, I wasn't ever there. I don't know anybody who was ever at the oil when the Rebbe was there. When the Rebbe came there, if people were there, they left. No one stuck around. The Rebbe would I'm sure there were people who were there, but I've never met anybody. Right? But we've seen videos, right? Levi Frieden was there doing his videos. We've seen videos, and what's the Rebbe doing as he's reading most of the letters? Crying. See the Rebbe has a handkerchief, and he's dabbing his eyes the whole time. He's wearing glasses, right? Those black glasses. We only saw Tisha B'Av, we'd see the glasses. For some reason, the Rebbe used to wear those glasses to say kinos. I don't know why. The black glasses, the Rebbe would wear the black glasses, and the Rebbe would be dabbing his eye. During Farbrengen, the Rebbe would often cry. You'd see, but he would just move the tear away with his finger like that. Right? But in the oil, there was a handkerchief. He was crying for 4 or 5 hours because he's hearing the pain of the Jewish people. But what always, I never really thought about it then, to be perfectly honest. It was like after. It took a long time. Right? It takes 40 years to figure things out, they say. So it hit me one day, and I was talking about it with a friend, and he also said it hit him. The Rebbe would come back from the oil, whenever it was, after 4 or 5 hours of reading about the pain of the Jewish people. Golus, that's why we're talking about this. Golus shebagolus. The Rebbe would walk into 770 and lift the spirits of everybody in the room to a level of simcha that was unimaginable by walking in with that walk and striding up to the front of 770 with energy, positive energy, the likes of which you've never seen. The whole room is singing and is leibedik, right? The Rebbe is encouraging the leibedikite, and the simcha is emanating from the Rebbe and covering the whole room. Where was the Rebbe 20 minutes before? Seeing the pain of the Jewish people in a level that no one else in the world sees. And 20 minutes later, the Rebbe would walk into 770 and lift the spirits of everybody in the room. Never really appreciated it. It took a while to figure it out. It's astounding, absolutely astounding. Be able to keep those two davar v'puche together at all times. Just absolutely astounding. So the Rebbe feels the pain of Golus more than anybody, and yet can explain to us on the deepest level what Golus is really all about. Okay, so let's go a little further. Vav. You guys aren't used to going through a mimer this fast. Umamshich ba'mimer. The Frierdiker Rebbe continues in his mimer, right? When did the Frierdiker Rebbe say this mimer? I said it. I hope you remember it because it's pretty amazing. You know the mimer that this is based on. When did the Frierdiker Rebbe say it?
When he came to America?
That first mimer that Frierdiker Rebbe said in America after he came, right? Purim Tafshin. Purim 1940. Right? First mimer that the Frierdiker Rebbe said in America, this mimer is based on. This mimer is based on that mimer. Umamshich b'mimer. The Frierdiker Rebbe continues in that mimer. Purim Tafshin. Now we're finally getting to the explanation of all this. How did that happen? That night, the king sleep moved. Right? Ikar Anes Purim. That's the Ikar Anes Purim, which we learned in the first ice. Nasal Yadei. I said, look in the book. Right? I'll make sure there's nothing left before I throw it at you. When I was young, I wouldn't, but I wouldn't throw coffee. Only vodka for Brengens. That was a common thing in those days. Like you'd be sitting in it for Brengen and somehow misbehaving, and the mashpia would take you'd get a thing up the wall, and I would wake you up. And no one ever did. Baruch Hashem, no one does that. In the old days, that was just like common, It was just the way, it was all Russian in the old days, and everything's calmed down. Now it's become, more...
Too woke.
And it's not woke. It's just people are, the people aren't... It was tougher in the old days. Lubavitch was very tough. Now we're, all friendly and warm and cuddly. Right? But I remember, sitting in Farbrengen and you weren't paying attention, and all of a sudden, boom! With glasses, it was good because it didn't get into your eyes. Right? The guys who didn't have glasses, it hurt.
They just got really good at closing their eyes.
Right? The spiel would just look at you, boom! Okay.
Bring that back. That's a great one.
No. Okay, well, next time I bring you, I'll make sure you're sitting next to me, and we'll give you a vodka bath. Just for you.
Wouldn't be my first.
No. Okay, say this. So then I don't have to do it. Umamshik ba'maimer. Dezeh shebelaila hu nada d'shnas hamelech. That night the king woke up, and who's that? Malko shel olam. And that, we said at the beginning of the Maimer's Iker and Eis to put him. How'd that happen? Na'asal yedei Mesiras Nefesh d'Yisrael b'meshech kol hashana. That resulted from the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice of the Jews, through that whole year. Right? The Jews were told that there's a decree against them. And they did tshuva. They were on a very, 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 very low level before all of this started, right? Where were they? They were at the party. Maybe they had kosher food at the party. Okay, so they had a Super Bowl party with kosher food. They're at the party, right? Boy, Gershon, it's going to be tough, the finals of the World Cup, huh? It's going to be tough. There's going to be parties. Okay, don't go to the parties. You can watch it, but don't go to the parties, right? Hungary's not going to be in the finals anyway, right? I mean, we know that, right? Well, I mean, probably. We know that, right? For Brazilians, for Brazilians and Argentinians, this is like a real, this is a friend of mine, in order to get a minion during the World Cup, he's a shliach in Brazil, so in order to get a minion in the World Cup, he got his main supporter he gave the company to his brother. He's not doing it anymore, but he was Mitsubishi Electronics in Brazil. He made all the Mitsubishi electronic products in Brazil. I think there's a class going on here. Isn't there a class going on here? Hello, is there not a class going on here somewhere? I think somewhere in this room there's a class going on.
Pass the vodka.
Pass the vodka.
I don't have any.
You drank the cup.
So he needed a minion, and he has a Chabaros in Brazil, Sao Paulo. So he needed a minion for Mincha. That's when the games were. So he got Leo to give him a huge screen, the biggest screen he had. He said, Leo was into it. So, okay, no, what do you find? Got him the biggest screen he could with a projector, and they had the games on these huge screens. And no one had those in their houses in those days, right? So he had this huge thing. And so everybody came to Mincha Marav. But Mincha had to be, at halftime or before the game. You had to work it all out, so because they wouldn't miss the game. These guys. Now the Brazilians in soccer, it's like they are, they make Canadians in hockey look chilled. So there was one guy. They're in the middle of the game. Brazil was playing, and they're in the middle of the game, and all of a sudden one of the guys leaves. But he's like a character, so yes, he was a little worried. Where did he go? So he follows him. He goes into the shul. And he finds the Aron is open. The guy has jumped into the Aron Kodesh. He's literally in the Aron Kodesh with the Sifrei Torah, holding a Sefer Torah, davening that Brazil should win the game. Right? So he said, "Would you get out of there?" And he said, that's okay. So those people, it's a different level of maniacal behavior. Okay. So whatever. So the Yidden were told they were at the party. And what happened? They did an unbelievably powerful tshuva en masse through the direction of Mordechai and Esther, and exhibited a state of Mesiras Nefesh for the next year, as we're going to see. It was an 11-month-long Mesiras Nefesh. That when did Esther say everybody should fast? We talked about it.
Pesach.
Pesach, right? They were mevatel Leil Seder, 2 nights that year. They didn't have Leil Seder. They fasted on Pesach. Yom Tov Rishon, Yom Tov Sheni, right? That's what they were doing because of the decree that called for the destruction of every single Jew on the face of the earth because they all lived in those 127 countries. There wasn't a Jew anywhere else, right? Okay. And that started a year-long, because it took that Pesach all the way until the next Purim, right? 11 months of Mesiras Nefesh, as we'll see. Ve'inyan hu, what does that mean? The inyan of Mesiras Nefesh hu mitzad nekudas hanefesh shelamayla mikeiches protim. Where does Mesiras Nefesh come from? That point of the Jewish soul that's beyond individual powers of the soul. And what's that called? Bechinas yechida. Yechida shebenefesh. 5 levels of the soul. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, the 3 levels clothed in the body responsible for action, speech, and emotion, and intellect, and thought, right? Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Chaya shebenefesh, which is the level of your soul while you're sitting down here in Eilam Hazeh. There's a level of your soul that right now is in Eilam Atzilus, experiencing incredibly powerful revelation of godliness. And then there's the level of your soul called Yechida shebenefesh, which is the name of the essence of your soul, where you're essentially and immutably connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay. So, Mesiras Nefesh comes from that place. The place where a Jew says, Azoi v'nit andrish. Right? There's no other way. I can't disconnect from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Similar to the mashal we brought earlier. Mesiras Nefesh is coming from that place where it's as if the goy is saying to the Jew, I'll let you live if you let me cut off your head. That's not a good deal. So that's the Jew. That's the same as someone saying to the Jew, I'll let you live if you do this aveira. Impossible. No such thing. That's the source of the Mesiras Nefesh of the Jewish people, which unfortunately has been the history of the Jewish people. Unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh in the last 2,000 years of Golos. And also before, obviously, because this was before that. This was 2,500 years ago, Purim. It was before the building of the Second Temple. The Second Temple was around for 420 years. So Purim's 2,500 years ago, right? 24 plus. Bechinas Yechida. So that level of the soul is responsible for the most powerful Mesiras Nefesh. V'hainu, the inyan of Mesiras Nefesh, the whole notion of Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, Masha Eina Mischashev, a person doesn't calculate im cheshbenes, the seichel, v'shar keiches, he doesn't make calculations and come up to various resolutions in his seichel, in his intellect, and other powers, his emotions. Why? Because it's coming from a place beyond all that. It doesn't come to the intellectual conclusion that it's worthy to give up his life. No, it's impossible it's impossible to disconnect from the Eibishter. So if that means giving up his life in Eilam Hazeh, so he'll give up his life in Eilam Hazeh, because ultimately he realizes his connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu transcends Eilam Hazeh. Who shall ma'ala shema'ales akeiches shel Eilam keren benefesh. Mesiras Nefesh elevates all of the powers of his soul, meaning his conscious reality is connected to his essential reality. So the conscious decision he's making down here in Eilam Hazeh to be willing to sacrifice his life in terms of, in order to preserve his relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that conscious decision is coming from the essence of his soul. So the essence of his soul is resonating in his conscious life. That's Mesiras Nefesh of a Jew. What's that like? The dugmas halas keiches limkerm be'etz shena, like the keiches connecting to their etzim at the time of sleep, right? But they're going up. Here, etzim is coming down. Ella shebeshena, at the time of sleep, halas keiches, the elevation of the keiches lenefesh to its source in the essence of the soul, he ba'ofen in such a way shekeiches mistalkim, they leave me'evar guf, the limbs of the body, va'olim lenefesh, and they go back up to their source. So they're in a state of concealment, batzmusay, and connected to the essence. So revealed powers go up to their source in essence. That's sleep. Mashen came from Mesiras Nefesh. What's Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh is bringing etzem down into conscious reality. It's not that this goes up, that comes down. Hare Adarabba, the opposite is true. Helam and Nefesh. that those hidden levels of the soul, he beis eredus, beis galus, is in a woken state and a revealed state. Meaning the highest level comes down and is revealed in the lowest level. And this affects the revealed powers of the soul, as they are found, in their place, goof, in the limbs of the body, shiur b'teilim lanefesh, they should be completely bottled to the highest levels of the soul. It doesn't consider any other reality other than its essential connection to the Eibishter. So again, sleep is the level down here going up to its source above. Mesiras Nefesh is the level above, coming down and expressing itself in a conscious, woken state down here, awakened state down here. So now, I just want to finish the paragraph before we stop. V'zeu mashal yedei Mesiras Nefesh nada d'shnas hamelech malkol shel ha'olam. Doesn't say the king woke up. What's Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh is the state that we experience in sleep moves down into a conscious state. Now, we don't wake up. When we wake up, so that's not Mesiras Nefesh. When we wake up, what happens? So we revert back to the state of reality that we are when we're awake, which is that the powers of the soul come back into the body and we experience the reality that we usually experience. And in Golus, that means we're experiencing a reality of concealment. Okay. No. What's Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh is that state of essential connection to the Eibishter is revealed in conscious reality. So what did that cause by the Eibishter? It doesn't say the Eibishter woke up. What's Golus? Golus is all of the level of godly light that energizes the world, reverts back to its source in the essence of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's hidden down here, but it's revealed up there. What happens when you and I express Mesiras Nefesh, which is taking Etzem and Neshama and bringing it down here and revealing it down here? We move that essential connection so that it's now being expressed in our conscious reality. So what is that caused by the king? It doesn't say he woke up. His sleep moves that essential connection, the highest level of godly light, essence, doesn't wake up, because if the king wakes up, then what's revealed? The level of godly light that powers the world. No, you want that level of essential reality to move down here. That's what happens. That's why it says the king's sleep moved. That all the advantages of sleep were revealed down here in Eilam Hazeh. All of the advantages of sleep in normal times are up there. All the advantages of Golus are up there. Down here, it's a shrek. Person's lying in bed snoring. Right? Okay. So down here, the Jewish people are, snoring their way through life. Okay. What's Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh brings that highest level of essential connection to the Eibishter down into our conscious reality. What does that cause in the Eibishter? That highest level of godliness is now revealed down here in conscious, in Eilam Hazeh Gashmi. So that's why it doesn't say the king woke up. It says his sleep moved. All the advantages of sleep, which are usually up there, are moved down here. That's Mesiras Nefesh in us, and that's the king's response. So Etzem was revealed down here. Wow. That's why it says the king's sleep moved. It doesn't say he woke up. Let's finish the paragraph. V'zeu mashal yedei Mesiras Nefesh nodada shnas hamelech malkei shel olam. His sleep moved. Dal yedei shenekudas nefesh. By virtue of that point of the soul of the Yid. Shelamayla mishtalshelish ba'adam. That's beyond the natural state of a person. Our essential connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. He'ira b'gilui. Shone in a revealed way through the behavior of the Yidden down here in Eilam Hazeh, and they came to a point where they revealed in their conscious behavior their essential connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's who they are, and that's what life is. Azoy v'nit andrish. This is the way it is, and there is no other way. There is no option. Al yedei zenasa kein gam lamayla. So to above. She'or ha'atzmi, the essential light. Shelamayla mishtalshelus. That's beyond the ishtalshelus, beyond the natural order. And that's where the light of the natural order goes in a time of Golus, so to speak, like sleep. To that state, they're elevated, the realities of Hishtalshelus, of the natural order, be'esa sheina v'Golus, when a person's asleep, or in terms of the Eibishter, in a time of Golus, that state of the king is Heir Begilui. Is revealed shines in a revealed way. And that's why it says, Noda Dashnas Melech, that the king's sleep moved. It doesn't say the king woke up, because the woken state has disadvantages. Like what? Essence isn't revealed in the woken state. What's happening now? The sleep moved. All the advantages of sleep are now revealed down below. Up until this point, all the advantages of sleep are only revealed above. So too, when you and I sleep, so too Gullus. All the advantages of Gullus are only revealed above. Down here, Gullus is dark. What happened? All of the advantages of Gullus moved down and were revealed in Gullus, because it didn't produce Geula. Right? We were still slaves of Achashverosh. We say that all the time. Akati Avdei Achashverosh. And then we're still ruled by Achashverosh. But at the time that we were ruled by Achashverosh, there was a revelation of the most powerful godly light. That's Purim. Okay, we'll go right to tomorrow. Right, Purim is the holiday that happened in Golos. Right? Hanukkah happened here. Why? We say Megillah.
Is that why Purim is when we